The Boston winter that year was colder than I had ever remembered. Snow piled high on the streets, covering cars and sidewalks in a thick white blanket. Outside the windows of my small office in the busy industrial part of the city, snowflakes fell silently, swirling around the streetlights, making everything look magical and frozen at the same time. Inside, I was sitting at my old wooden desk, looking over the quarterly reports for my small tech repair shop. I had been running this shop for 3 years, fixing broken phones, tablets, and computers. It wasn't a huge business, but it kept me busy and happy. Suddenly, my phone buzzed. It was a message from my younger sister, Vena. But before I continue, hit the subscribe button and tell me where are you watching this from, and what time of day is it? Emergency family meeting at Mom and Dad's tonight. Dad says it's mandatory. Something about your business. I sighed deeply. I already had a pretty good idea of what this was about. For the past 3 years, I, Varel Arden, had been running my own little electronics repair shop. My family, however, ran a much bigger electronics store called Arden Electronics, and they had never been happy about my decision to go out on my own. My dad, Lucien Arden, was especially loud about it. Arden should be running Arden Electronics, not fixing broken phones in some tiny little shop, he would say at every family dinner. What they didn't know, though, was that my little repair shop was only the tip of the iceberg. It was like a small window into my business, just enough to make it look ordinary. 3 years ago, I had used the money I inherited from my grandmother to secretly buy Apex Components. Apex Components was the main supplier for Arden Electronics and for several other big electronics stores in the Northeast. I had hidden my ownership through a holding company, which meant no one knew I owned it. I managed everything through people I trusted. My repair shop was just a cover to keep everyone from finding out what I was really doing. As I drove through the snow-covered streets toward my parents' big suburban house that evening, I couldn't help but smile to myself. They thought I was struggling to get by, but in reality, they were paying millions of dollars to my company every year without even knowing it. It was a funny kind of secret. When I arrived, my family was already gathered in the living room. Dad sat in his big leather armchair like a king on a throne. Mom was perched nervously beside him, her hands folded in her lap. Vena and her husband Daxiel were sitting on the sofa, both wearing expressions of fake concern. "Varel, sit down," Dad said, pointing to the only empty chair across from him. I sat down, keeping my face calm and neutral. I didn't want to give anything away yet. "We need to discuss your situation," Dad started, his voice carrying that tone of authority I had heard 1,000 times before. "The family has been watching your little experiment with concern. This repair shop thing of yours," Vena added in her most sympathetic voice. "We've heard things are going well, of course." Well, yes, things had been going well, but only because I had been smart about it. I had made sure that the repair shop looked small and struggling. Most of the money from the shop went back into improving the quality of service, rather than expanding. To them, it looked like I was barely getting by. Dad leaned forward, his expression serious. "Your business is failing," he said. I stayed quiet and listened as they laid out their plan. They wanted to take over my repair shop and put me in a low-level management position in one of their stores. "It's time to stop this foolishness and join the family business properly," Dad said firmly. Mom nodded encouragingly. "We're doing this for your own good, dear," she added. I listened quietly as they discussed my future, as if I wasn't even in the room. Vena was already suggesting which of my employees to fire. Daxiel was calculating how to sell off my equipment. It was almost funny how confident they were, thinking they had all the power. Finally, Dad pulled out a document from a thick folder. "We've already drawn up the papers," he said, holding it up. "Just sign here, and we'll take care of everything." I reached into my bag and pulled out my phone. I scrolled through my contacts until I found the number for Apex Components. The room went completely silent as I hit the speaker button. "Apex Components, how may I direct your call?" A professional voice answered. "Hi, this is Varel Arden, the owner speaking," I said calmly. "I'd like to speak with Kalis about our supply contract with Arden Electronics." Dad's face was drained of color. Vena's mouth fell open in shock. Mom grabbed Dad's arm, her eyes wide. "One moment, Ms. Arden," the receptionist replied. Dad stood up abruptly, his face turning red with anger. "What kind of game are you playing?" he demanded. I smiled, finally letting them see the truth. "No game, Dad. I've owned Apex Components for the past 3 years. Every component, every circuit board, every piece of technology in your stores, you've been buying them from me." The room went completely silent. Then Kalis's voice came through the speaker. "Ms. Arden, how can I help you today?" Just checking in, Kalis. How are our friends at Arden Electronics doing with their payments? All current, Ms. Arden. Their latest order for the spring quarter just came in yesterday. Shall I process it? I looked directly at Dad, who was now pale and trembling. Hold that order for now, Kalis. I'll call you back tomorrow. I stood up, picked up the takeover document from the coffee table, and tore it slowly in half, making sure everyone could see. Now, I said calmly, I think it's time we had a real discussion about our business relationship. The room stayed frozen. Outside, snow continued to fall silently on the Boston suburb, marking the beginning of a very different kind of family meeting. The grandfather clock in the corner ticked loudly, filling the silence with its slow, steady rhythm. Dad's face had turned from red to purple, a vein pulsing in his temple. Vena sat frozen, her perfectly manicured hands gripping Daxiel's arms so tightly that her knuckles were white. This is impossible, Dad finally managed to say. Apex Components is owned by Sterling Industries, I said simply. Dad looked confused and tried to speak, but I held up my tablet. Sterling Industries is a holding company. My holding company, I explained. I pulled up the corporate ownership documents and turned the screen toward them. Would you like to see the papers? Mom found her voice first. But how? The purchase price for Apex would have been $37 million. I finished for her. Grandmother's inheritance was quite substantial. While you were busy mocking my little repair shop, I was using it to learn the industry from the ground up. I studied every part, every supplier, and every market trend. You manipulated us, Vena accused, her voice sharp and shrill. All those times at family dinners pretending to struggle. Manipulated you? I laughed quietly. Like you manipulated Davis Electronics into bankruptcy last year? I heard all about that at the supplier meeting. The desperate calls for payment extensions, the way Arden Electronics swooped in to buy their assets at half price. And Daxiel, I know about your part in that takeover too. Daxiel shifted uncomfortably in his seat. He had helped plan the takeover and even earned himself a promotion to Chief Strategy Officer at Arden Electronics. Dad stood up abruptly, his business instincts kicking in. Fine, you've made your point. Let's discuss this reasonably. What do you want? I sat back in my chair, enjoying the shift in power. First, let's talk about pricing. Arden Electronics has been getting special low prices from Apex for years. That's changing immediately. You can't do that, Vena protested. We have contracts. Contracts with annual review clauses, I corrected her. Perhaps you should have read the fine print more carefully. The spring quarter order you just placed? Prices are going up by 15%. Dad's face went pale. He knew exactly what that would do to their profit margins. That's extortion, he shouted. That's business, I replied calmly. Just like it was business when you tried to force me out of my shop today. Mom stepped forward, trying to calm things down. Varel, dear, surely we can work something out. We're family. Family? I asked, pulling out another document from my bag. Like when you and Dad tried to block my business loan application at First National Bank last year. That backfired. That's when I started recording all our interactions. Here's what's going to happen, I continued, my voice firm. Arden Electronics will accept the new pricing structure. You'll sign a 5-year supply contract with Apex at market rates. No more preferential treatment, and you will stay completely out of my repair business. Or else. Dad challenged me, though his voice lacked its usual confidence. I smiled. Or I'll start supplying your competitors at a discount. I wonder how Riverside Electronics would feel about getting components at 20% below what you're paying. The threat hung in the air. Riverside was their biggest competitor in the Northeast. Such a price advantage would seriously hurt Arden Electronics' market share. Daxiel, who had been quiet all this time, finally spoke up. This could destroy the company. Thousands of people could lose their jobs. That's your choice to make, I replied. I'm just offering a fair business arrangement, the same courtesy you showed me today. Vena stood up, tears of fury in her eyes. You've been planning this all along, haven't you? Playing the struggling daughter while secretly plotting to take over. Take over? I laughed softly. I don't want Arden Electronics. I built something of my own, something you all thought I couldn't do. I'm just making sure you never try to interfere with my business again. I stood there, looking at their shocked faces. Snow continued to fall quietly outside. The grandfather clock ticked slowly. And in that moment, I knew that everything had changed. The power in the room had shifted, and for the first time, my family could see me. Not just the little repair shop owner they had tried to control, but the real Varel Arden, smart, strong, and completely in charge of her own future. Dad sank back into his chair, looking much older all of a sudden. His shoulders slumped a little, and his face looked tired. "You are just like your grandmother," he said quietly. "She always said you had her business smarts." I nodded. "Yes, she did," I said. But I also remembered something else she had told me a long time ago. She had warned me about mixing family and business. She said it could be tricky and sometimes hurt people you cared about. I should have listened sooner. I stood up and slowly gathered my things. My hands felt a little shaky, but I kept my face calm. "You have until tomorrow morning to decide," I said, trying to sound firm. "The new contracts will be delivered to your office at 9 a.m. Sign them, or I will start calling your competitors." As I walked to the door, Mom called out, "Varel, wait! What about Sunday dinners? What about family gatherings?" I turned around one last time. I felt my heart tugging in two directions. "I think we all need some time to think about what family really means," I said softly. "Don't you?" Outside, the snow had stopped falling. Everything was quiet and covered in a smooth white blanket. The streets and trees looked clean and calm. I took a deep breath and started my car. As I drove away from my parents' house, I caught a glimpse of them standing in the doorway in my rearview mirror. Dad was on his phone, probably calling his lawyers. Vena was crying, leaning on Daxiel's shoulder. My chest felt heavy with a mix of happiness and sadness. I felt strongly about making this choice, but I also felt a little lonely. I hadn't wanted things to go this way, but they had forced my hand. Tomorrow will be hard. There would be difficult talks, probably more family drama, and maybe some anger. But for now, I had one more stop to make. I turned my car toward the part of the city where my small, shabby workshop waited. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. The lights were still on. My team was still working late, as always. They were the real reason I had succeeded, not just because I owned Apex components. They worked hard, cared about customers, and believed in me. It was time they knew the whole truth, too. The night wasn't over, and I had a feeling the real storm was just beginning. The next morning, Boston's financial district was already buzzing with activity. People hurried to their offices, taxis honked in the streets, and the smell of fresh coffee drifted through the air. I parked my car in front of the Apex Components building. My office looked shiny and ready for a big day, but inside I felt tense. I had spent half the night talking to my repair shop team, explaining everything. They were shocked at first, but happy to know the truth. They understood why I had made some hard choices. Now it was time for the real challenge to begin. My phone had been flooded with messages since dawn. Missed calls from Mom, angry texts from Vena, and several emails from Daxiel. I ignored them all. Right now, I had to focus on the 9 a.m. meeting. Nothing else mattered. At 8:45, Kalis, my vice president of operations at Apex, walked into my office. "The Arden Electronics legal team is here," he said. "All 6 of them. Your father is with them. And Vena is in the lobby with Daxiel. They want to be part of the meeting." I straightened my jacket and took a deep breath. "Let them come," I said. "The more witnesses, the better." At exactly 9 a.m., they filed into the conference room. Dad led the way, followed by his lawyers, Vena and Daxiel. Their faces were full of anger and disbelief. They weren't expecting to see me sitting at the head of the conference table in Apex headquarters, looking calm and ready. Before we even started talking, Dad said loudly, "I want to make it clear that I don't agree that you own this company. Your claim is not valid." I smiled a little. "Go ahead and try to fight it," I said, pointing to my own legal team. "The paperwork has been perfect for 3 years. But while you waste money and time on lawyers, I'll be having some very interesting conversations with Riverside Electronics." One of Dad's lawyers whispered something into his ear. I could see Dad's face tighten. They knew I had them cornered. I slid folders across the table. "Here are the new contracts, just like I promised. Market rate pricing, 5-year term, and no early termination without penalty." Daxiel grabbed a copy and started reading. His face turned pale as he realized what the numbers meant. "These prices, they'll cut our profits by at least 40%, he said in a small voice. "Welcome to the real market," I replied. "You've been getting artificially low prices for years. That ends today." Vena slammed her hand on the table. "This is ridiculous. Daddy, we can't accept this. There must be other suppliers." "There aren't," Daxiel said quietly. "Apex controls 60% of the component market in the Northeast. The other suppliers can't handle our volume. Importing from overseas would take months and months." Dad's lawyers huddled together, whispering. I could see the worry in their eyes. They realized how thoroughly I had planned this. Then Mom burst into the room. Her eyes were full of tears. "Beryl, please. I've been thinking all night. We can work something out. We're family." "Family?" I stood up slowly. "Mom, 3 years ago when I started my repair shop, you said I was just going through a phase. When I needed a small loan to start, Dad tried to stop me. And when I won the Best Local Business Award last year, Vena told everyone it was just because of fake votes." I pulled out a stack of papers from my briefcase. "Here's every email, every message, every attempt you made to undermine my business. Do you want me to read them out loud?" The room went silent. Even the lawyers looked uncomfortable. "But here's what you never asked," I continued. "Why did I start my repair shop? Because I saw how many people were struggling to fix expensive electronics. While Arden Electronics was pushing new products that were too costly, I was helping people fix what they already had. My shop has helped over 3,000 families keep their devices running." Dad scoffed, but I noticed Daxiel looking thoughtful. "And Apex," I continued. "I bought it because I saw how Arden Electronics treated smaller retailers. You gave special deals to some, while hurting others. That ends today." I pushed another document across the table. "This is my final offer. Market rate pricing for everyone. No more preferential treatment. And Arden Electronics will establish authorized repair centers for your products." Daxiel leaned forward, interested. "Like your shop?" "Exactly," I said. "You've been fighting the right to repair movement, making it impossible for independent shops to get parts. That changes now. It's not just good ethics, it's good business." Vena looked at Daxiel in surprise. He picked up the contract and started reading carefully. "This could actually work," he muttered. "The repair centers could generate steady revenue and build customer loyalty." "No," Dad thundered. "We are not turning Arden Electronics into a repair shop chain." "No," I agreed. "You're just adapting to a changing market. Sign the contract, and I'll even help you set up the repair center network. Refuse, and I will start calling your competitors in an hour." Dad turned to his lawyers, who nodded grimly. They knew there was no way to fight me. "I'll need to take this to the board," Dad said finally. "You have until noon," I replied. "Oh, and one more thing." I slid a final document across the table. "My repair shop is now an authorized Apex Components training center. We will be certifying technicians for all these new repair centers." Mom burst into fresh tears, but these weren't entirely sad tears. For the first time in years, I saw a glimmer of pride in her eyes. The meeting ended. Dad and his lawyers went back to Arden Electronics headquarters for an emergency board meeting. Vena followed them out without a word, but Daxiel lingered. "You planned this perfectly," he said quietly, with a note of admiration in his voice. "Want to get coffee? I'd love to hear more about your repair center network idea." I looked at him suspiciously. "No tricks?" I asked. "No tricks," he said. "I think you might have just saved Arden Electronics from becoming obsolete. Your father is too proud to see it yet, but you're right about where the market is heading." As they left, Kalis approached with a new stack of messages. "Riverside Electronics has been calling all morning. They heard rumors about changes at Apex." I smiled. "Tell them I'm in meetings all day. Let them sweat a little." The next few hours would determine the future of both Arden Electronics and my relationship with my family. But for the first time in years, I felt like I was finally being seen for who I really was. Not just the rebellious daughter, but a businesswoman in my own right. The storm I had started was far from over, but at least now everyone knew exactly what they were dealing with. The Arden Electronics board meeting ran over the new deadline at 12:01. I was about to start dialing Riverside Electronics when my office phone rang. It was Dad's private number. "The board has approved the contract," he said, his voice tight. "With one condition." I waited. "They want you on the Arden Electronics board as well as head of the new repair division." I hadn't expected that. "Who proposed that?" I asked. "Daxiel did," Dad admitted. And I seconded it. The admission seemed to cost him something. I could hear the years of pride cracking in his voice. "I'll think about it," I replied and hung up. Earlier, Daxiel had shared some uncomfortable truths about Arden Electronics. Their sales were declining as more people became environmentally conscious and repair-friendly. The company needed to evolve, but Dad had been too proud to change. For the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful. I had fought hard, worked smart, and proved myself. And now, people were starting to see me for who I really was. My phone buzzed with a text from Vena. She wrote, "We need to talk alone." I agreed to meet her at my repair shop. When she arrived, Her fancy designer heels clicked on the workshop floor. She looked around at all the busy technicians working. They were fixing broken phones, tablets, and other gadgets, carefully making them work again. "It's not what I expected," she said, watching a young technician carefully repair a smartphone screen. "I always imagined you working in some dark basement." "That's because you never bothered to visit me," I replied. She flinched slightly. "I deserve that," she said softly. She turned to face me. "Daxiel showed me the plans for the repair center network. It's really impressive. You're not just fixing phones. You're building something that lasts." "That was always the plan," I said, smiling. "Why didn't you tell us about Apex and all of this?" she asked. "Would you have listened, or would you have tried to take control like you did yesterday?" She was quiet for a moment. Then she admitted, "I was jealous. You were always the smart one, the one Grandma believed in. When you started this shop, I thought I was finally better than you, working at Arden Electronics, wearing expensive suits, looking down on my sister, the repair technician. And now I realize you saw the future while we were cleaning the past." She waved her hand around the shop. "This is where the industry is heading, isn't it? Sustainability, repairs, helping customers?" "Yes," I said. "The question is, are you ready to be part of it?" Before she could answer, the shop door chimed. Mom walked in, looking slightly out of place in her pearls and soft cashmere sweater. "I hoped I'd find you both here," she said softly. "Your father is on his way, too." A few minutes later, Dad's car pulled up. He entered the shop slowly, looking at everything around him. The busy technicians, the repaired gadgets, and the organized chaos of the workshop. "Your grandmother would be proud," he said quietly. "She always said business isn't just about money. It's about building something worthwhile." "That's what I've been trying to do," I replied. Dad pulled out a folder. Inside were signed contracts and a letter from the Arden Electronics board. They were apologizing for trying to interfere with my business in the past and offering me a seat on the board. "We're not asking you to give up anything," Dad explained. "Keep running Apex and your repair shop, but help us make Arden Electronics better too. Not as our supplier, but as our daughter." I looked at my family. Mom's hopeful smile, Vena's newfound respect, Dad's careful attempt at reconciliation. It was all there. "On one condition," I said. "The repair network starts here with my team." "They've earned it." "Agreed," Dad nodded. "Daxiel is already working on the plan. He says you two had a productive coffee meeting." Vena added, "Speaking of your team, we need to talk about expansion. If we open repair centers across the Northeast, you'll need to train more technicians. I might have some ideas about that." I smiled, thinking about the training program I had been developing. That evening, after the papers were signed and plans were made, we gathered for a family dinner. Not in my parents' formal dining room, but at the small cafe next to my shop. The same cafe where I had first dreamed up my business plan 3 years ago. "To new beginnings," Mom proposed, raising her glass. "And to old wisdom," I added, thinking of Grandma. Dad raised his glass to the future of Arden Electronics and Apex Components. "And to family," Vena concluded. "Sometimes families need to be broken apart to grow stronger together." As we ate and talked about the future, I watched my repair shop through the cafe window. The lights were still on, my team still working. Tomorrow, I will tell them about the expansion plans. They weren't just repair technicians anymore. They were pioneers in a changing industry. 6 months later, the first Arden Electronics authorized repair center opened in downtown Boston. The ribbon-cutting ceremony had the whole Arden family there, with Dad and me sharing the scissors. The photo made the local business news. Arden Electronics embraces right to repair movement. It was a family business evolving and changing. My repair shop became the flagship training center. Vena surprisingly took a keen interest in the educational program, helping train new technicians. Mom started a sustainability initiative within the company, working hard to reduce electronic waste. Even Dad found his passion again, mentoring young entrepreneurs who wanted to open their own repair centers. Family dinners resumed, but they were different now. There was no more judgment, no competition. Instead, there was collaboration and respect. We weren't just a family business anymore. We were a family that appreciated and celebrated each other's visions. I kept my office in the repair shop, even after the Apex Components revelation. It reminded me of where I started and why. The small desk where I had first dreamed of changing the industry now shared space with certificates, awards, and a simple framed photo of Grandma. One evening, as I was locking up, Dad stopped by. He picked up a framed article from my wall, the first review my repair shop had ever received. "You know," he said thoughtfully. Grandma once told me something I didn't understand until now. She said, the best business leaders don't just build companies. They build bridges. I smiled, thinking of all the bridges we had built and rebuilt over the past 6 months. She also said something else, I added. Sometimes the strongest foundations are built on broken ground. Outside, the Boston sunset painted the sky in bright shades of orange, pink, and purple. Through my shop window, I could see the Arden Electronics sign glowing in the distance, proudly advertising sales and services. Between our two businesses stood the city we served, full of people who needed both our products and help maintaining them. We had found our balance, as a business, as a family, and as a force for change in an industry that needed it. I realized that sometimes the best revenge isn't winning a fight. It's transforming it into something better than victory. The next morning, I walked through my repair shop, watching my team at work. They were teaching each other new techniques, sharing tips, and helping customers with smiles on their faces. Vena joined in, helping with training sessions. Mom worked on sustainability projects, finding new ways to recycle old gadgets. Dad was mentoring a young entrepreneur, showing her how to start her own repair center. I thought about the first day I opened this shop, alone, with nothing but a small desk and a dream. Now it was full of life, teamwork, and hope. I could see our customers leaving with fixed phones, happy smiles, and sometimes even hugs. This was more than a business, it was a community. That evening, we had another family dinner at the cafe. We laughed, shared stories, and talked about the future plans for the repair network. Vena suggested ways to reach more people. Mom shared ideas for reducing waste. Dad encouraged us all to think big. And I just listened, smiling, proud of what we had become together. The city outside continued to move, busy with people and lights, but inside the repair shop, there was warmth, hope, and determination. Our family had learned a big lesson. Sometimes it takes being apart, making mistakes, and learning from the past to grow stronger together. I looked around at my team, my family, and the shop I had built from scratch. I realized we weren't just fixing gadgets anymore. We were fixing things in a bigger way, helping people, building the future, and keeping Grandma's lessons alive. Through the glass window, I saw the glowing signs of both Apex Components and Arden Electronics. Together, we were making a difference in the world, one repaired device at a time. And that, I thought, was better than any victory I could have imagined. Sometimes I understand the best success doesn't come from beating others. It comes from building something stronger, something meaningful, and something that brings people together. And that is exactly what we had done.